Right people, I come bearing fantastic news that the regular iPhones are no longer going to be left out and they might also get the newest chipset. We also have details on the camera upgrades and the capture button with iPhone 16, so let's delve into this. Essentially, Mac Rumors has received information on early development versions of iOS 18 and the hardware referenced in the codes, which is D48, D47, D93, and D94. Now, you're probably wondering, what does that gibberish mean? Well, this refers to the full iPhone 16 models, specifically the iPhone 16, the 16 Plus, 16 Pro, and 16 Pro Max. Now, there has been some rumors pointing towards an Ultra model in the works, but Mac Rumors has found no code referencing it, though to be honest, I doubt it would be another additional iPhone in the range. 5 new iPhones would be way too much. It's more likely the Ultra just becomes the new Pro Max, and so those kind of details aren't confirmed till later on, since of course, marketing names can change. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. Anyways, let's get into the meat of the story, because in this code there's also references to 4 new iPhones using the A18. The codename for this chipset, Tahiti, has been referenced in relation to the Pro phones and the base models, which is fantastic news, and we have heard about this from leakers as well, so I'm glad there is some sort of confirmation within iOS 18 as well. There is still very much a possibility the higher end phones get the A18 Pro, but the regular phones get the bog standard A18. Now, I'm pretty fine with this actually. At most, the Pro variant might have a few more GPU cores, which is what Apple did with the iPhone 13 series, where the base phones had an A15 with a 4-core GPU, whereas the Pros had an A15 with a 5-core GPU, but ultimately it did not make a massive difference. Even though the Pros are slightly better performance-wise on paper, they are fundamentally the same chips and use the same cores. And that's awesome news, because it did bother me a little that Apple was using last year's chips on this year's base models. I know the difference between the A16 and A17 isn't major for most consumers, but still, it would be nice to get the latest chipset when you're paying a whopping $800, and so using a base version of the A18 in the iPhone 16 is a very nice change. I mean, in previous years, Apple was completely fine giving the base phones the same exact chip as the Pros, so they should ideally bring back that tradition, but hey, I'll be fine with the regular A18 in the iPhone 16 and A18 Pro for the 16 Pro. The code also references that Apple's not going to be using their Apple in-house modems in these new iPhones, which makes sense, considering we've heard Apple's been facing so many issues trying to get these modems to work. So please, Apple, don't rush into it. Continue using reliable Qualcomm modems and give us your modems once they're perfect. Now let's move on to the new capture button. We've heard a lot about this as of late, and I've frankly been wondering why the heck Apple's giving us yet another bloody button. Well, my question has now been answered, because ever-reliable Mark Gurman mentions in his newsletter that the special button is going to be used for recording video, which makes no sense. I know it's literally called the capture button, so it doesn't take a genius to work out it's related to the camera, but why this makes no sense to me is because it kind of feels redundant to have a physical button on the device just for the camera. Right now, you have multiple buttons that can do similar functions, like the action button and the volume buttons, for example, so why do we need yet another button on the iPhone? I thought Apple was all about the minimalist life. The only reason I could see Apple adding this is if they were testing the waters for haptic buttons. We heard a lot about this coming to iPhone 15, but of course they ended up canning it because these buttons were causing issues internally, and so if Apple's worried about making the power button, action button, and volume buttons haptic, maybe they want to introduce the haptic capture button and see how the response is, and also see how reliable it is long term, and then in the off chance it's bad, they can easily kill it off because it's only a button for the camera, and at the end of the day, it doesn't ruin the functionality of the device. Alternatively, many have been suggesting Apple's introducing this to better integrate the Vision Pro into the ecosystem. So this button can not only record regular video, but of course, spatial video for the Vision Pro headset. That could be a possible reason, but I think it's a bit too early for that, considering most are not going to be buying a $3,500 first generation headset. And also, it's only coming to the US initially, so of course, a wide range of iPhone consumers, even if they have the cash, won't be able to buy this. But anyways, what's interesting is that all iPhone 16 models are getting this, which is surprising because the action button was a Pro exclusive. And so we'll see what Apple ends up doing with this fancy button. It's crazy that the iPhone 16 leaks are this stale that we've been blabbering on about a button for weeks. But hey, let's see if Apple does surprise us and actually makes this capture button useful on the device. Moving to the actual camera, one of the main upgrades we could see with the Pro devices is a new 48 megapixel ultra-wide. This rumor comes from Weibo source Instant Digital, and I'm pretty hyped about this because everyone knows right now the ultra-wide does produce softer images, and so with more megapixels, we could see better performance in low light conditions. I know bigger megapixels don't always translate to better shots, but because it's 48 megapixels, it should be a much larger sensor, and remember with the main sensor they did give us pixel binning to merge data from 4 pixels on the sensor into one super pixel, so they will undoubtedly bring this tech to the ultra-wides and massively improve the detail of the shots. Also, you now might be able to shoot 48 megapixel Pro RAW photos with the ultra-wides, which offers more detail and is easier to edit for the camera nerds. And so yes, as I said, I'm looking forward to this. If it makes the ultra-wide just as good as the main lens, this is fantastic news. I'll be honest though, the only reason I want this to pan out is because it should then convince Apple to bring down the current ultra-wide the Pros have to the regular iPhones. The base iPhone 15 today has the same exact ultra-wide from the iPhone 11, yes, a phone from 2019, and as one expects, it's a very soft sensor that lacks autofocus and also has no macro support, so I've been waiting for the base models to get an upgrade in this department, and I'm sure if the Pro phones get an upgrade, we should see the current 12 megapixel ultra-wide on iPhone 15 Pro come down to the base models, which would be a massive upgrade. Another awesome upgrade with iPhone 16 Pro that I'm looking forward to is the Tetra Prism telephoto lens coming down to the regular Pro iPhone. Quo and the Elec had told us about this earlier, but now Mac Rumors chimes in, but you don't need internal sources to realize this just makes sense. Remember when the iPhone 12 Pro Max introduced a new main sensor with the fancy sensor stabilization tech? This came down to the regular size with the 13 Pro the following year, so I had a feeling from day one this would also apply to the 5X telephoto, and guess what guys? Leakers are now reporting the same. We also know that next year's Pro phones are getting larger. Remember, the components needed for the Tetra Prism camera takes up much more space than the 3X telephoto lens in the 15 Pro right now, so of course, fitting that in a tiny 6.1-inch device might not be possible. However, the 16 Pro is going to be jumping to 6.3 inches, and so that should provide more space inside the device to give us the new 5X telephoto. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.